I am comparing O Brother Where Art Thou, a film about brothers and their epic journey, written and directed by two biological brothers, Joel and Ethan Coen, to Homer's The Odyssey. It is about lost souls struggling to find their way home who must confront mighty forces, outrageous experiences, and terrifying foes in order to successfully complete the journey. But it is not just the completion of the journey that is essential, it is the journey itself that enriches their lives. In their adventures, they become fuller individuals. They are both emotionally richer for their journeys. The two heroes I am referring to are Ulysses Everett McGill, simply Everett in the film, and Odysseus in the Odyssey. Ulysses is Latin for Odysseus, clearly intentionally done by the Coen brothers. The two epic journeys are strikingly similar. Both journeys feature an otherworldly, dreamlike quality where the hero meets obstacles of fantastical nature and supernatural phenomena, sometimes opposing the hero and at other times supportive of the hero on their journey towards discovery. Both heroes stay focused on their own primary goals, returning to their loved ones. For Everett, he must defeat Vernon T. Waldrop as he has been courting his wife in his absence. Likewise, there are many suitors courting Odysseus' wife in his own absence. Many foes are faced and conquered throughout the process of the hero's returning home, and in both, the hero faces an endless foe that neither can escape, seemingly. For Odysseus, Poseidon is out to get him. For Everett, it is the jail warden that is hunting him down throughout the film. And even after Everett is pardoned by the governor for his crimes, this jail warden continues to persecute Everett. The warden proclaims that he is not bound by laws, as they are human institutions, seemingly declaring himself a god, like Poseidon. In an ironic twist, Everett only escapes the evil warden when a flash flood drowns him, something that could never happen to Poseidon, in an unexpected twist by the Coen brothers. Eventually, the hero in each story finds himself returned to his loved one, a wiser and more dedicated lover. In the film, they only have an hour and 45 minutes. Perhaps this is why there are very little flashbacks, unlike in the Odyssey, where Odysseus is frequently recounting stories from the past. The only direct reference to the Odyssey is the line of the text shown at the beginning of the film, O Muse, sing in me, and through me tell the story, which is one translation of the very first line of the Odyssey. In both works, there is a blind prophet. In the film, there is a blind homeless man on the railroad that predicts Everett and his crew won't get the treasure they seek. This is similar to the Odyssey because Tiresias, also a blind fortune teller, prophesies Odysseus and his crew that it will take many years to get home. The prophecy proves true for Odysseus and his crew, as it does take a long time to get home, but incorrect for Everett, because he does indeed find the treasure he seeks. It is the crew in the film for who the prophecy is correct, for they do not find the literal treasure they seek. The treasure for Everett is his wife, because he knowingly and purposefully lied to his crew by saying that there's an actual treasure that he knows about to get them to come along for the journey while he goes for his wife. In the film, there is a baptism that occurs down by the river, and it pulls in Everett's friends, which is reminiscent of the seductive lotus plant consuming Odysseus's crew. Both the heroes resist the temptation of a magical solution and instead keep their minds on the end goal, getting home to their wives. However, the crews are momentarily delirious, and in their distraction, they forget about the treasure and getting home. They want nothing other than to stay put. The crew takes their eyes off the prize, yet our heroes do not. In the film, we also see women washing their clothes down by the river, which lulls and seduces Everett and his crew and transfixes them with their seductive singing, just as the sirens draw in men with song in the sea. Delmar states that they should listen to the sirens, and they do. However, this is in stark contrast to the Odyssey, because in the book, Odysseus is tied to his ship and his men's ears are all plugged as instructed, so in the Odyssey, they do not fall victim to the sirens. Later in the film, Ulysses, Pete, and Delmar dress as KKK members to escape their friend Tommy, analogous to Odysseus and his crew hiding under the sheep to escape the Cyclops' lair. While escaping the KK rally with Tommy, they must defeat Big Dan T, a very large one-eyed brute, a modern-day Cyclops. While Big Dan's day job is a con man presenting as a Bible salesman, a job befitting of the 1930s Depression setting, he clearly has no pull with a god, because after being defeated, he is irrelevant, unlike Polyphemus, who prays to his father Poseidon after being defeated to seek revenge on Odysseus and his crew on his behalf. Later in the film, the three Harvey girls don't recognize their father. Even when Everett tells them it's him, they don't believe him. The girls are convinced that Everett was hit by a train, whereas Odysseus was supposedly killed in war. This scene is strikingly similar to the scene where Telemachus doesn't recognize his own father while he's disguised. Even after Odysseus reveals himself, Telemachus is in disbelief and thinks it is a god. Further exploration of Everett and Odysseus. They both have a trickster quality and are plagued by their own vanity. Both Odysseus and Everett's tragic flaw is their pride. Odysseus is obsessed with his own reputation, Everett is obsessed with himself. Both are certainly capable of being cocky, though, like when Odysseus brags about his own appearance and how he draws the eyes of many women in Book 19 of the Odyssey, while Everett is mesmerized with his own hair, repeatedly announcing that he is a Dapper Dan man, which is the hair product he uses. This highlights one of the features of the characters that is transformed in the journey. At the start, their vanities dominate their characters, but as they make their journey, they become less vain and preoccupied with appearances and more in touch with meaningful treasures, their loved ones. This is an instance where the modern work helps me gain a better understanding of the ancient work, of experiences that have the power to transform our character, from blindness to self-awareness. I myself, too, moved from a position of blindness to one of self-awareness in watching this film. I saw what I had not seen before in the Odyssey after experiencing Everett, who became himself Everett the family man instead of just a caricature of himself, Dapper Dan man. Moments like this, I really feel like the Coen brothers did a fantastic job transposing the work into a modern time. While there is a major difference in the time and place of each story, the essential feature of personal courage, perseverance, and cleverness in the hero are central to both stories. Our characters are also very different. Odysseus commands much respect because prior to the voyage, he was a king and a soldier, while Everett is just a felon who has been put in jail. Everett is also constantly lying, deceptive, and quarreling with his crew, where Odysseus only lied when necessary, like when he had to lie to Polyphemus about his name being nobody. Further differences between the two protagonists would lie in their physical strength. At a point, Everett confronts his wife Penny's suitor, Vernon T. Waldrop, and challenges him to a fight. Almost instantly, Everett is knocked out and loses the fight, whereas when Odysseus challenges his wife's suitors, he uses his bow and destroys them all. Lastly, perhaps the most obvious difference is that Odysseus has a son, Telemachus, but the Coen brothers decided against giving Everett a son in the film. More on that later. We see the same cast of characters in both stories, just transposed to a different time. They are updated version of the epic. For instance, the characters in the film, Pete and Delmar, might be considered to represent Odysseus' crew. Both Pete and members of Odysseus' crew challenge the hero for leadership. Pete wants to take charge and challenge Everett's authority. This is like when Odysseus' men open the bag of wind because they believe that Odysseus is trying to hide treasure from them. Rather than respect their leader's authority, they try to overrule it, just as Pete attempts to do when he protests to Everett that he should be the leader of their crew. Other characters in the film, for instance, George Nelson, act as Odysseus' crew at times. When Odysseus' crew kills several cattle that belong to the sun god Helios, they pay the price. In the movie, George Nelson, the 1930s bank robber, shoots cows with his Tommy gun for his own amusement. He too must pay the price. Both meet the same fate. They are electrocuted. This is where the Coen brothers again add an interesting twist to a new time and setting. While Odysseus' crew is smited by Zeus with a bolt of lightning, George Nelson meets several thousand volts of electricity in the electric chair. The general outline of this epic tale is revisited and remade in every great piece of literature, it seems. The story of a hero's journey who must struggle to find his way home, meet great danger and adventure, and prove himself worthy of love are the central themes found in the great works of literature. We see these elements again in the Coen brothers' film, yet the film develops its own identity. This is because the Coen brothers are not required to make a film that is verbatim what we have in the book. The Coen brothers add their own twist to their creation, and I find their modern take very meaningful. Something I found particularly meaningful was rather than being driven to return home to a son, as Odysseus does in the tale, Everett returns home to a home full of daughters. Why daughters and not a son? Well, in the 1930s, females did have value, whereas in archaic times they were not considered valuable. In archaic times, the father's pride in his son outshone any pride for a daughter. Girl children were a burden for fathers because their daughters had to be married off to another. In the book, Telemachus is even more prized, given that he is to become king. Odysseus needed to return home to assure his son's ascension to the throne. Everett, on the other hand, makes a point that they are his own daughters, and he takes pride that they should carry his name, not Vernon T. Waldrop's. So the Coen brothers did not need to incorporate a son in the film to express their version of the Odyssey. This nod to the value of females was a nice touch by the Coen brothers. Homer's audience was more interested in the power and nature of the gods, too, and it's evident that Homer caters to that audience. However, social issues and anxieties such as racism, unscrupulous politicians, and other pressing social ills were of much greater importance in the 1930s setting in the film. In this updated setting, the Coen brothers are now able to make social statements which would have been impossible had they limited their setting to Homer's. This is why I believe the Coen brothers were very successful in their version of the Odyssey, as it preserves the essence of the Odyssey but is meaningful in its own right. The Coen brothers movie showcases why it is better for filmmakers to add their own renditions as opposed to duplicating the original work. Only if the new film authors are creative and artistic by adding their own component can the film inspire new feelings and take on its own life.